Okay, I wanted to, hello, this is Mystic Rob again. I wanted to make another video. I got some responses about my last video, and one of the things that was interesting is, and I want to cover some of these points, was that the premise was challenged. The premise that men are inherently violent, and that is part of of what makes us up. And as I argued, we need to recognize that and incorporate that in our being and understand that to be complete and to have an understanding of who we are as men. The premise I want to defend because I think it's maybe not as obvious to other people. I've done lots of study in this area. The thing is, if you go back to even before men were men, you just look at basic primates, other than bonobos, all the primates are very male-dominated and very violent. The bonobos are not, but the belief is there was an abundance of food in where they live, so the competition was not there. Well, you know, you only have to realize that that's a unique situation. So most animals are in competition, and violence is how things are settled. Who gets the female? Who gets the the food? And as we evolved, this was clearly the dynamic. And of course, not so much for women, but definitely for men. When we look at the bones of these prehistoric people, they find the similar kinds of injuries that you would find for people who do rodeos. Now, you know, it should be obvious that primitive man was not conducting rodeos. What he was doing was he was fighting large beasts, mastodons. So, and I want to make a distinction here. When I say violence, violence is not necessarily the same as anger, although the two are related. So it's a violent act to go after a mastodon with, armed with only a spear. Do you have to be angry to do that? No. Does it help? Yes. And this is why we have this fight or flight response, and it's I think it's probably stronger in men because men have the hormonal system that is going to react to that more. So this is just not, some weird idea I came up with on my own. If you look at history, if you look at, at what makes men men, you realize that you have to be violent to make the kill. You have to be violent to defend your woman in your land and everything else. And this is what prehistoric life was. And as I often, the point that I often make, you can't undo in 10,000 years of civilization what has been formed in millions of years of evolution. Now, of course, as our culture evolved and we became, civilized, codes around violence were established. And ideas of fairness in battle, that sort of thing. The Pope outlawed crossbows. And why were crossbows outlawed for? I mean, not for hunting, but they were outlawed for battle because it was unchivalrous. You wanted to face your opponent mano a mano. And the culture eats this up. You know that scene in 300 where the Queen gives the shield to her soldier and says, "Come back with it or on it"? That wasn't just movie dialogue. That was a phrase that was taken from history. The Spartan women told their men this. You don't come back. And there's no halfway measure. You either go out there and be victorious, or if you haven't died trying, then you haven't tried hard enough. And these things still exist in our culture, but we've been so, they've been so sanitized and so, men have, particularly have been so, what's the word, domesticated. You know, just like you take any wild animal, you separate the rowdy ones and you just let the ones who are more domesticated reproduce. That's kind of what we have in society today. Or as some critics say, men have just been pussified. One of the things that I think is important, and like I say, this is why it's, you know, this is part of our culture, that women are still controlled by this. This is why, you know, you've always heard of the woman who has a boyfriend who hits her, but she doesn't leave him because she loves him. Well, what most people don't understand is it's the act of hitting her that causes her to like him more. I know I always get a lot of flack from this from women. That's because they respond emotionally rather than rationally. The idea being that if you are an aggressor and you show aggression, that triggers an attraction element for women, because for most of our history and most of our prehistory, it was that aggression that signaled, here's someone whose genetic code will survive. So if the man is overly aggressive, then the progeny will be overly aggressive and will have a higher survivability. So this is built into our genes. And it's, you know, even if you don't want the man to, you know, if the woman doesn't want to be beat by the man, there's still the element of the bad boy, you know. The women like the motorcycle riding, leather-clad bad boy. And it's really, you know, they haven't grown up to control that same way that men who are overly aggressive haven't learned to be real men, because they're still little boys in men's bodies. They haven't learned to control their aggression either. A comment I want to make on this was, a friend of mine and I were sitting in this bar once, and we wanted to kind of, you know, annoy the barmaid. And because she knew who we were very well, she knows that we're not the kind of people who would ever lay a hand on a woman. But we start joking like we were, like, you know, oh, did you get out of jail? Yeah. What were you in for? Oh, I hit my girlfriend. And we're just joking like that because it was such a ridiculous premise. And the barmaid smirked a little bit, and we were razzing her. But then this woman that neither of us knew walks up to us and say, hey, how you guys doing? And me and my friend, we looked at each other like, what the hell? You know, they never walk up and talk to us when we're talking about Star Trek, you know? But we sit there and pretend like, you know, one of us got out of jail for, you know, when we're talking about hitting girlfriends, the women walk up to us. It just, you know, that's just, it signals that attraction. Again, I make that comment. I'm not making it as a moral statement. I'm just saying that it is a fact of biology. So the thing is, to really kind of get how these dynamics work, how to project power, you can do that so much better once you understand this. And going back to the anger versus violence, anger can be used. A lot of weightlifters and other people who have feats of strength know that if you get angry, you get a little more strength, a little more power. The thing, though, that I wanted to leave on with this video, and I think I've made a very good argument to show that this premise is true. The movie Troy. There are so many elements in that movie about all the things I've just been talking about. And I could probably make a half-hour to an hour-long video on that movie alone. The director and the people who put it together really understood these things well. I'll just simply say that if you watch the movie, watch it with the perspective that Paris is young and learning how to be a man. Hector is a man's man. He's grown up. He has the idea of when to enact violence, how to use anger. He is someone who's righteous and understands what being a man really is. Achilles never learned. He's in the process, and he keeps learning these lessons too late. So if you watch the movie with that mentality, all of a sudden, and particularly if you study the kinds of things that I have about, you know, like the David D'Angelo type stuff and that sort of thing, you'll discover that there's some really powerful lessons. So yeah, watch Troy. Also, there was a poet, Robert Blythe, I think. He's also done a lot. He did a series called, oh, I forget exactly what the name of it was. It was like, it wasn't On Being a Man. It was something about, well, I'll have to look it up. But at any rate, they are both really good series to follow. A Gathering of Men, that's what it was called. A Gathering of Men. And this is really an element that's missing from our culture, and I just wish there was a stronger movement to bring these things back. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Peace.